This is Pamela Kuhn, and the curtain is up on Center Stage, the show about the arts and the artists behind their work. Today, I am in the company of men who are achieving great things in the world of opera. And for my radio listeners, we are connected today in this interview by the wonders of Zoom, so I hope you will forgive all the visual references that I make along the way. And I hope you also forgive my dog in the background if there's any barking, because it's hard to keep that one down. I have with me today Repetiteur and Conductor at the Royal Danish Opera in Copenhagen, Mr. Nick Fletcher. Also joining us from Flensburg Opera is Ben Woodward, who is sheltering at home, separate from his job as repetiteur and conductor. And Ben is also the creator and music director of Fulham Opera in London. And lastly, the incomparable bass baritone, Trevor Scheunemann. He joins us from his home in Maryland. The Washington Post calls his singing rich and gleaming, while Opera Today refers to his sound as burnished bronze. I think you've wrapped it up there, Trevor, with all the accolades. I love that. Gentlemen, today I would like to speak about the challenges that we are facing with COVID-19 and the music world. And I know the impact has affected all of us. It has affected all of you in different ways. And one thing I think that might be interesting in this interview is that we're coming from different parts of the world, of course. Each one of you will have something varying to share with us. And I think it's vital for the future of music that we can share and be as honest as possible. So with that in mind, I want to start with Nick Fletcher in Denmark, because Nick, I understand that Denmark actually has been very positive about embracing reopening in mid-April. And that you have had some sort of parameter of still working during this time. Can you share with us what those boundaries have been and what is going on in your life as a musician in Denmark?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been locked down now for about 8 or 9 weeks, and initially, like everywhere else, we couldn't do anything, and that was a bit of a very odd time. Once that initial period came, when it was over, we as a pianist group were actually allowed to go into the opera to specifically do some recording for singers. And so that was nice. It was not very much, it's not very long, but it was a nice, felt very privileged to be able to do some work, really. And, you know, instead of sitting at home doing, you know, whatever I'm doing at the day, to actually put fingers to a piano, and that's fantastic. And then recently, yes, we are more open than a lot of other places, and actually as a theatre, the Royal Danish Opera, we've started doing concerts. It's been about 2 or 3 weeks now in people's backyards, so we just rock up and it's some ballet dancers do a pas de deux, and opera singer sings an aria, and then actually some people from the theatre come, and there's a very great Danish institution of communal singing, and so they do some numbers from one of the sort of famous collection of Danish songs. So it's really nice, and we go in people's backyards, and we're able to hopefully bring some art to people who are stuck in their houses.
Mm-hmm. But how have you handled the rehearsal process? I mean, you had to bring people together for that. In a way, we haven't had one at all. I mean, it's very much sort of, we're all doing stuff that we know, certainly from our point of view, from the opera point of view. I'm not so sure about the ballet, but from our point of view, it's very much singers just coming and singing an aria they know.
and so we just sort of do it, and it's a little bit sort of rough and ready, but the concerts aren't very long. We're only talking about 15-30 minute long sort of events, and so in some ways that sort of adds to it. It's not polished, but it's fun, and we're enjoying playing and singing, and hopefully the audience are enjoying listening to us.
So you're maintaining your livelihood, and I would imagine because of this, the confidence levels amongst artists is different there.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Denmark as a high tax, big welfare state, was very, very quick at providing support to individuals and institutions. And as a general rule, I would say people are very happy with the work the government has done here. And from our point of view, we still get paid. I mean, we're very lucky. There are people who've fallen through the cracks, of course, like with any of these decisions. But on the whole, I would say people are pretty happy with how the government's responded. And for us artists, that means that we're sort of, well, I mean, thankfully I have a full-time job, but even I think for the freelancers, mostly I think people feel more confident than in other countries.
That's quite incredible. I mean, in comparison to the United States, this is considerable on the confidence level. Ben, I have to ask you, in Flensburg, so you were sitting on the Danish border in this delightful little town. You've been working full-time for Flensburg Opera. When was the last moment that you were in the opera house working full-time?
Full-time? Well, we shut down in that way that, perhaps is history's way of telling a joke on Friday the 13th of March, which and we did a performance of Don Giovanni on Thursday the 12th, and I was due to conduct my first Don Giovanni on Saturday the 14th. Oh. So I didn't get to do it, which really kind of sucked. Yeah, that was the first time we did that. Then so first of all, our performances were cancelled, or at least put on hiatus, and we still were going to work on the following production, and people were very confused why we were doing full musical runs of this modern piece we were doing. And next thing we knew, the government came down. It was the state government of Schleswig-Holstein. Initially, I think it was sort of a federal thing, but it certainly came from Schleswig-Holstein, that we had to stop rehearsals, and that happened on about the 16th or 17th of March. And we haven't been in since, as far as a group is concerned. Much like what Nick has just said, we have been allowed to make an appointment to go in. We only have 3 practice rooms in our building. I mean, it's a relatively small theatre. And we've been allowed to make 1-hour appointments each day. So I've been going in and keeping my fingers warm pretty much 5 days a week ever since that happened, which has been nice. And I've learned some music and done some sight reading of pieces I should know and don't. But it's been very quiet and very weird.
Has the quiet been nice for you in any way?
I'm not going to say anything unpleasant about any of our singers, but
that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's been really good not to hear some of them sing. No, that's not fair. It's nice to have some time to reflect, to do some work, to read some books, which is something I don't actually have very much time to do usually. But I've really missed the making music, and especially the conducting for me. As I say, this calendar year I've conducted just 3 shows, and it's now looking, as of yesterday actually, it's looking like I might not get to conduct anything else for the rest of this calendar year.
I'm so sorry.
And that's so that is a bit of a loss, to say the least. But as I say, we've been allowed into the theatre 1 at a time, and that's been a blessing in its way.
I'm so thankful to hear that, and I'm also thankful that you're in the hands of Angela Merkel there, we respect her as a leader and a scientist. And so she brings a different dynamic, to everything in Germany. I mean, do you feel safe? Do you feel safer there than you would be in London, for instance?
I guess so. I mean, Germany's health system is, I think, it's sort of the middle ground between the American private system and the British NHS, and so it's very well supported. It's very well. There's plenty of capacity if anything goes wrong, and it has in no way been anywhere near overwhelmed. Merkel's been fantastic about it. She's been one of the great world leaders about all this.
Yes.
The town of Flensburg itself, we're 2 hours north of Hamburg on the Danish border. There is a town website, and we've only had about 40 cases in total of this virus, and with I think 2 people have died from it, and it's been very gentle here in that way. And so it feels slightly weird when the whole town was shut down, when we were only seeing these very small numbers, and similarly weird when you're going into a supermarket and everyone's wearing masks, and it just feels like there's a bit of a weird disconnect.
Yeah. So you've been very fortunate there in this small, lovely town. You haven't been as impacted as we have been in the United States. I've got to turn this over to Trevor now, because certainly that has not been our scenario here, has it? We are really living in a horrific situation, and not only for musicians, but for everyone right now. And we're facing such uncertainty here. I think that is the worst thing that's happened to us. Trevor, I know that you're on the road all the time. You've had this great career boiling. I've known you since you were at the Young Artist Program at Washington National Opera. And I've lovingly watched your rise, and your work at the Met. And suddenly, boom, the door is down. I know, I can imagine how your feelings are right now, but let's look to a little silver lining, because I know you're in Maryland with your family. You adore your son, and now you're spending all this time with your son. Has this been a time of reflection for you? Has this had some sort of upside?
Absolutely. So since my son was born in 2014, I've not had this much time at home with him ever. Not any single chunk of time like I've had now. And because the schools are of course closed here, and we are, with some guidance from the state, homeschooling all of our children. My wife does the lion's share, but I also am heavily involved with that. And, I get up with him, I put him to bed, and I have all this time that I have never had in his life with him. And I cannot tell you how much that means to me. And it is definitely a silver lining, at least amongst all this horror from a business standpoint. So I'm very much enjoying that time with him.
Oh,
Absolutely.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you this. I mean, first of all, what was your last job? What was your last gig before this March 13th number? I mean, Friday the 13th is very apt. And where would you be right now if we hadn't faced COVID? So let's start with, what your last job was.
Sure. My last job was at the Met end of February. And it was in Notte di Figaro. And everyone was half joking about the news out of China and about this coronavirus thing. And as the weeks went on, I finished my last one there. I think it was the next to last week of February weekend. And we get, I think it was an email from Peter Gelb. So I was home for a couple of weeks, and we get an email that the last half of March will be canceled, and then reassessed at the end of the month. And a week later, we get the news that the season had been canceled completely, throughout the rest of the spring season. I was scheduled to go back. I would have finished up my last Bohème there last weekend, or this weekend actually. I think it would have been Saturday, the 9th. And so that would have been my last gig at the Met. if things had gone as planned.
Right.
I, of course, am in the same boat as most of, I think, pretty much every American opera singer, in that there was this kind of horrific domino of cancellations that came down after March. You know, one after the other just toppled down through. Right now, everything is canceled for me until September. I still have contracts at the Met in September, but they sent them to me. I have not received signed contracts in return, so I don't know what's going to happen there. And
So,
I am not hopeful, honestly.
Really. So we've heard the rumors. I mean, I can imagine what it was like at the Met when the talk first started in February, early March.
Right.
You know, even I, with my angel choir, I dared to have a rehearsal, like many people did, the first week of March. And when I think back about that now, and what possible jeopardy I could have put people in, oh my God, I almost can't sleep. You know, this is, and again, we're faced with the inevitable. How can we bring people back together? You know, they talk about putting people in audiences, but that's hard enough. But how are you going to get in an elevator? And ultimately, how is the rehearsal process going to function? I can only imagine that for every American singer, they've played with the idea of maybe looking to a new line of work. I suppose this is an option just out of survival. And I'm sure Nick and Ben, you've thought about the same things. If we could just go around the table here and maybe talk about that. Nick, is there any way or anything that comes into your mind that you might be able to reinvent yourself as a musician, staying within music now? You know, if everything topples at the Royal Opera there?
To be honest, I haven't really. I think probably it's a sign of the confidence that we were talking about. I haven't given it much thought. If and I know that's not wonderful from an American sort of ear point of view. I suppose from yes. I mean, I often think about sort of, you know, doing more coaching, for example, but then there's a lot of things like that which actually, as we talked about, the younger people, if they lose their livelihoods and they can't work, then how can we coach people that don't have the money to do it? It's a sort of slightly worrying thought, and I think it's probably a sign of sort of our confidence here. To be honest, I haven't, touch wood, had to think about it a lot. You are in such a fortunate position, and I believe that it is Denmark and Norway that are actually a little more relaxed about, you know, what you're enduring, and especially with regard to musicians. I know that some singers here specifically have, with that domino effect that Trevor was talking about, we're hoping that their gigs in Australia and New Zealand and maybe places further afield were still going to happen. But now, you know, this is a clean sweep. Ben Woodward, I get back to Angela Merkel. I feel that the theaters of the world are kind of watching her to see what mandate she's going to put down as far as theaters reopening in Germany. And maybe this is the barometer. Maybe she is the person, you know, we should be watching. What is your feeling? Do you think fall is realistic?
Well, the thing which Angela Merkel has is the most theatres sort of in any given country, which do opera. I mean, there are about 80 theatres in Germany that have full-time ensembles, and people expect to go to the opera. And it is a very recognized thing in Germany. They're very proud of the fact that they have this tradition, that people go to the opera most of the time. Our opera house, you know, for a weekday performance of Don Giovanni is generally full. So she is very aware that this art form and everything is important. She's aware that the people in it have to be supported, both in terms of the fest singers, those who are in the ensemble, and those are the people who have been, I don't know if lucky is the right word, but those singers in the ensembles are still getting paid their full salary at this moment, and they're sitting at home watching their Netflix, playing their computer games, and just waiting to be told to come back to work. And the same is true of the freelancers. I believe the freelancers are mainly getting their what they would have had for their gigs paid for some way or another.
Impressive.
Yeah, so we're waiting to be told we can go back. I don't know if you saw, there's an article from, it was a German university town beginning with M, the town name I simply can't remember, where they'd done a very scientific article about the dangers of singing and of how the droplets are just spewing forth, and that is one of the more dangerous things you can do. And so they think that singing in opera will be one of the last things to be reopened, possibly even after sports. So, yeah, we're waiting to see what Merkel does, but everyone is certainly on tenterhooks about it. There is a plan for the 2020-21 season to begin, but there's also a certain degree of skepticism whether it will. I know our Kapellmeister here is he's in a very despondent mood about whether we'll start performing again in this calendar year. And who knows?
Who knows? I hope everyone will be conservative. So Nick Fletcher, I'm really quite envious of you as a musician right now. And, as long as you can keep working and doing your art, and I think this is the most critical point, artists are meant to create. And in talking to so many of my own students and artist friends, they have been in a state of grief and loss. It's like they're going through the stages of great loss, And so many of them don't want to go to the piano. They don't want to go to sing. They feel so heavy within themselves that they can't do their art. Now, to me, this is the worst danger of all. And this is when I talk about confidence, because if we lose our creative spirit and we let our voices be silenced, this could be the worst thing that ever happens to the performing arts. And we know we're always sitting on tenterhooks anyway. In America, I know certainly in Germany and Denmark, you have government help, which, as you've described, Ben, is so fantastic. So Nick, you keep making your music there and stay happy and enjoy your downtime. At least you guys are being paid, and that's a beautiful thing. So with that, Trevor, I've got to come back to you because I know you quite well, and I've interviewed you before on my show. And you are a man of many talents. You first wanted to become an airline pilot.
Right.
And before this interview, I was thinking to myself, wow, is Trevor thinking about maybe going back to flight school and getting that pilot's license to do charter flights? Because private flights, all around the world are something that are being hired. Has it passed through your mind with your need to take care of your family and questions ahead? Has it ever come to your mind to change routes right now?
That's a really interesting idea, Pamela. I had thought about the airline career, and that one is just as devastated as ours pretty much now. So maybe that's not, but charter, that's interesting. And private, I had not thought of that. But that would take many hours and many thousands of dollars to achieve the licensing for that. But yes, of course, I've thought about what can I do in the meantime before everything gets going again. Of course, for most performers, the first thought is, teaching, finding a university job or bolstering your private studio. Mm-hmm. But at least right now, most of it's being done online and via Zoom or FaceTime. And I've tried a few of those lessons, and I absolutely detest it with a passion. I cannot do that. So that's not something that I'm prepared to do. But I think one of the things that my friends in Europe there have an advantage of is the state support in a time like this. I, of course, looked into the unemployment, and I am eligible for that from my work in New York, but the system is completely destroyed. Like, there's so many of us that should be getting benefits that cannot get through the system, make it work. It is an absolute nightmare trying to bridge the gap between, when we lost our work to when we might have some more. So I wish that there was something in place that functioned. I mean, they were not, of course, ready for however many millions of applicants at once to come in through the system.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one of the things that makes this very stressful, is that there's no really intermediate support to even find other lines of work. So it's a difficult time. Luckily, my wife is a school psychologist and works for the county in the state of Maryland, and has a very well-paying, well-benefited job. And we are going to be okay. But it is I'm lucky in that respect. I know many of my colleagues don't have that that good fortune. So I feel badly for them in this really tough time.
So this is something, I mean, Nick and Ben, albeit aside, you're being looked after financially. Artists here in America have done an interesting thing, and they've started artist relief funds. And this is individuals who've done this. This shows the spunk that we have in this country, which you cannot kill, which is a beautiful thing. And I have spoken with, for instance, Kirsten Scott from Bear Opera, and they started their own artist relief fund for anyone who had sung with them, for instance, so artists could pay their rent. And Trevor, for those who can't, and for the high-level singers you're working with all the time, how are they coping? How are your friends coping right now?
I think they're having a hard time. Honestly, this is something that's no one could have foreseen. Mm-hmm. And it happened so abruptly and so violently. Mm-hmm. I think everyone is scrambling just to find something. Some are doing some online performances. I know some companies, ironically on the smaller side, are actually paying their artists for canceled contracts, even though they don't have to.
Brilliant.
And I wish that some of the bigger companies would take an example and try to help their artists as well. So there's some support there, mm-hmm. Thankfully. Mm-hmm. And I think, they're like me, they're trying every day to get through to the unemployment agencies with very, very little luck. But I think a lot of them are having a very hard time, and I feel for them.
So do I. So I'm glad you're okay, Trevor, for the short time. You're not mm-hmm. going to be flying those planes yet, or bringing out.
If someone wants to pay for my training, I'll do it tomorrow. But it's pretty expensive getting those licenses.
Would you really?
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Yeah, and still sing on the side.
Sure.
Yeah. This is something I think if we've had to face any crisis in the world, I mean, thinking back to people who faced the world wars, mm-hmm. There were a great many artists who had to put that aside for a moment just to be able to find a way to eat and look right. to their families. This is where we really have to get down and dirty and roll up our sleeves. I want to get back to the online thing. It's interesting, mm-hmm. Trevor, that you're so vehemently against it. That's because I've met many of my musician friends. They have a reaction one way or another. It's kind of 50-50. And you're going to stay true to that. You're not going to,
I can never say never, but I don't think that I, as a teacher, am effective enough to make it mm-hmm. worthwhile someone to pay me to do that for them.
Really?
I honestly, yeah, I don't think at this point. I don't think I am. Maybe there are other teachers that can be effective enough in an online format to merit being paid for that. But I right now I don't feel like I am. I need that in-person, small detail, body language, breath, mouth position, especially the vibrations. I mean, everything. You lose so much through the electronic as far as sound quality. I mean, you can do diction, you can do language, you can do performance practice, but as far as like the details required for singing, I find it very, very, very difficult.
Okay, that's dead honest. I appreciate that. I think you're underestimating your talents as a potential teacher, and I certainly hope you will look to that, sometime soon. Nick, in that way, what have you been doing online, or have you been, and what are your feelings about the presence online?
It's interesting because actually that was our first thing when the lockdown happened. I think all of us, state protected or not, sort of had this sort of void of, well, what do we do? And this was something we talked about very early on, as in our wonderful music staff group, and we just came to the same conclusion that the sort of coaching or teaching, coaching, whatever that we've just heard about, it's very difficult. So what we've been doing is instead sort of recording tracks for singers with their notes for things that are coming up next season, and sending that to them. So that's not online in that sense, but I know the singers in our ensemble have also had language lessons and language coaching online, and that has gone down very well. So I think it's not so much that there isn't anything we can do. It's just I think that's sort of the normal interaction that you have in a lesson or in a coaching is very difficult to replicate. But yeah, so we've been doing bits. I think we're also going to be doing a little bit more other things online, sort of in the coming weeks and months, and we're going to think a bit more about what we could do. And I know also the theatre has been the Royal Danish Opera, and well, the Royal Danish Theatre. So that's the theatre, the ballet, and the opera has been very good at sort of putting stuff online and trying to engage with the audience that way. So I think there is a role for online stuff in both learning and with audience, with our interaction with the audience as well. It's just thinking through properly what that is.
I recently interviewed Stamford Symphony's CEO, and he was talking about that. They were having online parties for the audience. And literally everyone was invited to have their own champagne and view what they had put together. But then they have a huge presence online now. Now, online is something that's been going on for a while. You know, this isn't just totally new, guys. And I tend to embrace it a little more readily, even though I'm a technical dinosaur. I'm always curious. And I love the fact that it is readily available to everyone. And I do believe that this may be the new normal. I do. I don't have an issue teaching online. It's not ideal. I got over it. But because I want to have that kinship with my students. I mean, definitely. And I want everyone to keep singing on the very bottom line. Ben Woodward, I know that you've done some very creative things online while you've been sheltering in. Can you share your project you did, the Rosencavalier Trio?
Well, we've been trying not to take ourselves too seriously with it. And we've been, my wife is she's one of your students, as you know, Pamela, but your radio listeners might not. So she's a marvelous soprano, and we've been trying not to take ourselves terribly seriously. We did a Rosencavalier Trio where she dressed up as all three different characters, and I played the piano, and we laid it on top of each other. We tried to make it look like it didn't take as much effort as it did. And I think that might be the key to some of this. We made it look like it was just the app you can get on your iPhone. It's called Acapella. But if you've got an actual professional voice that makes quite a lot of noise, it's just not good enough. So we ended up, so yes, there was actually some fairly professional microphones going on, and my video editor guy in London was brought into play to make it work. I've also been putting together a very silly Ride of the Valkyries in isolation at the moment, and we'll see how well it's working. So far, the other day I was Zooming and screen sharing with my video guy, and we had 8 out of the 9 Valkyries screaming. Some of them had done better jobs with the costume than others. It was me conducting, and so far we'd got 2 trumpets and a double bass that we were putting into it as well, and slowly but surely trying to eliminate the piano.
Wow!
So as I say, it's been, but that is for our own. You know, I think the old quote goes, "Why does a painter paint? Why does a sculptor sculpt? And why do we do this? Because we've got to create." Which is, that's a bit different. We also consume quite a lot of the Met's stuff online. We watched a Salzburg Arabella with Renee Fleming the other day online, and we trying to educate ourselves like that. But for actual creation of stuff, I don't know, trying to be serious and do the stuff which we do day to day to create, the next great Figaro, the next great Arabella, for want of a better thought. That's going to be very difficult online. I've been involved in the NIOPS, which is a kind of, how would you describe the NIOPS? The
A kind of middleman to agents.
Yeah, they're not quite an agent, but they have all these auditions, don't they? And the guy that runs that has been having big Zoom calls once a week with about 60 or 80 people on them, with opera intendants from across Europe, casting agents from America have been on it, and a host of singers of massively varying degrees in their careers. And they've been talking about this as well. They've been talking about, well, do we create an opera that, essentially looks like what we're looking at now with, the different characters in 4 different boxes? And it's like, yeah, you could, but do you really want to watch that? You want to, if you're going to sit and watch an opera online, then you probably want to watch the Met or, or the Danish Ring or whatever else. You probably don't want to sit and watch 4 boxes singing at you. And so I think that is the problem, which is why, as I say, my wife Kat and I, between this Ride of the Valkyries and indeed the Rosenkavalier trio, which we did, taking ourselves terribly seriously is not what we've been going for. And there was, what was that? Was it Jamie Barton in America who put together that marvelous, was it Rheingold or Valkyrie, where they'd done it all with Wotan calling up and FaceTiming Fricka and all the rest of it. And the reason why it got so many hits, and it had I think it had over 100,000 hits or something, was because it was funny. It was great singing, not taking itself too seriously. So as we go forward, I think we've got to be careful, because if we take it off the stage, does the art become very sterile?
It's a really good point. That's a really, really good point. Nick and Trevor, I can only imagine that you agree with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so worrying. I mean, I don't know how artists are really dealing right now. Our whole nature is to be fragile and sensitive. And we're becoming overly sensitive to everything that's happening every day. And for those who don't have an income, I don't know what the way forward is. So maybe that's my next question to everyone. Trevor, what is our new normal going to be? What do you foresee for the world of opera, first of all, and for working musicians?
I think it's, I was optimistic at the beginning of all this. I thought, oh, they'll get a handle on this. We'll take care of it. Things will, maybe we'll lose the spring season, but we'll come back stronger in the fall. We'll hit it hard. But the longer this goes, and the more information that comes out about how this virus operates, I'm not. It seems to statistically target the audience that supports, at least in America, supports us as artists, and that is the older population.
Right.
And I don't think that it's A, safe, or B, that population is going to be willing to come out anytime soon until there's a sense, at least overall sense of safety. Perhaps that takes a vaccine or a very effective treatment. But I don't see that the model of every third row or putting together something for a quarter capacity of the opera house is going to be effective. I think that the situation is extremely dire in America for opera. I think that other art forms may have it slightly easier, but we are a large scale art form. Large scale, like we have many people at once in the opera house, not just opera, not including the audience, just on stage, pit on stage. So I don't see how this comes back without at least the vaccine or some sort of amazing treatment, and a psychological sense of relief from the pressure and the danger of the virus. I think for artists, that means that you're going to have to look for other avenues. I don't think that there's going to be much performing for someone that is just a full-time gig performer, you're going to have to get creative. Hopefully you can find that support from the government to bridge the gap for a few months or hopefully longer. But you're going to have to find other jobs. I mean, taking whatever comes to you, honestly. I am not optimistic about returning to performing anytime soon.
It's complicated, isn't it? It's very, I think the solution is so complicated that it is just darn frightening.
Yeah.
Thanks for your honesty there. I really appreciate that. And I really hope that you will stay within the framework of music always. Ride this out, stay with your son, have that beautiful quality time you wouldn't have had, at any other junction. I mean, seriously, sure. To all of you, I want you to ride it out. Nick, Fletcher, what are your ideas? I mean, about the future of music, the future of opera, and what is going to be the new normal?
I think here we are optimistic, but I think realistic. Optimistic in the say, actually, our theatre launched our next season today and put in place safeguards. We actually did do half. It was half capacity theatre for about a week before we shut down, and that seemed to work quite well. And we've launched the season and sort of tried to make it as people can cancel the tickets, and swap them for other shows, etc. And trying to create, trying to make people comfortable to buy the tickets. Nevertheless, I think everyone thinks it's going to be difficult, and we can, if we do go back, so large groups of people in theory at the moment will be able to go back from September the 1st. In the long term, you can see a show like, say we do go back and there are sort of guidance restrictions, on how far people have to stay away from each other, etc., etc. You can see something like Magic Flute, a Fidelio working with the orchestra in the pit, but further on we have Parsifal. Can we see that work in the pits? I'm not sure, and I think that's going to be the difficulty at the moment. As you've seen, I've been very positive. I think it's going to be how long this goes on for, and I think that's why it's important to try and be positive and to try and not just sort of give up and say, well, we're not going to do anything until everything's and try, but also be realistic that that's maybe not going to happen, and give our audiences things online. If we still can't play in theatres, maybe we can give them stuff online and actually maybe extend our online content. I don't know. I think it's about sort of not giving up straight away, but being realistic that it may not happen. I mean, as I say, gladly we seem to be less hit here, and I think we are positive that we might do something this before the end of this calendar year, but you never know.
I think it's fortunate that in the situation in a lot of European houses that you have the government support for the arts, for that house to be able to do those experiments. Here, there's just no room for that. There's no safety zone, for companies to experiment with small audiences, that kind of thing. It's just we don't have that luxury.
Yeah, and that's because of the litigious culture in America.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right. And here we are again. You and I, Trevor, we're on this side of the Atlantic, and we sound screwed in so many ways. It's just so sad. Nick, it's interesting. I don't know a whole lot of what's going on in Denmark, like on the streets. I mean, has the temperature of the people been fairly positive through this whole thing? I'm sure they've been terrified, but here it's quite volatile in America right now in every possible way. And we absolutely do not have any strong leadership to really bring us together. Have you had that do you feel that you've had that cohesiveness during this time?
Yes, I mean, I think it at the beginning, of course, I think like everywhere else, it felt, those first 2, 3, 4 weeks felt quite volatile, and I think that that's only natural. I think what happened here with our Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen, they act, and the rest of the Parliament as well. I mean, we have something like I can't remember. We have 13 political parties overall, and I think something like 10 or 11 of them are in Parliament. And actually, you just see these great pictures of them, or they all go off and camp out and hash an agreement out, and then there you go. I think so. Actually now it, to be honest, it feels relatively normal here. I mean, we don't really wear masks. Of course, we still keep the distance, and we're not going out partying every night. But you know, if I go out on the street now, it doesn't feel that dissimilar to how it did before all of this. And indeed, actually, bars and restaurants, albeit with some limitations, are going to open next week. So there is a way forward, and that, you know, all of this will sort of, there is a way forward. But I think that the thing is, there is still, having said that, I think everyone has that uncertainty. You know, yes, we're in a very privileged position here, but we don't know how if this is going to reappear, if there's going to be a second wave, and I think that will be very interesting. But for now, yeah, I think we really feel, as I say, for the most part, there are one or two grumbles about this and that, and I think people aren't absolutely sure of the government's, the Social Democrat-led government's views on culture. But and they got off to a little bit of a slow start. But in general, I think people are very happy and very positive to have been led by Mette Frederiksen and through this.
Impressive. Yeah. I know in the past,
I know.
Nick, I know in the past that you've worked for the Yetta Parker at the Royal Opera House, and of course assisted Tony Pappano. I'm sitting here in Connecticut, where Tony Pappano was originally from, believe it or not. You've assisted him, for instance, on The Ring at Royal Opera House. Do you hear any grumblings of confidence levels from ROH in London?
I haven't heard too much specifically. The little conversation I've had with old colleagues seem to, for now, be sort of fairly positive-ish. I think it seems like they took a quite quick decision, but I think again with something like the Opera House, it's the long-term thing that's going to be the issue. I think right now, of course, yes, people are getting fed, and there are people who are sort of disadvantaged now. But I think with an organisation like that, it's all going to be about how quickly they can get back, and with the Arts Council funding, how much of that's going to keep coming in and stuff. And I think I would say it is not sort of overwhelmingly positive, but from the little I've heard from speaking to old colleagues, right now it doesn't seem to be absolutely dire, but that's not to say that there's not worry also.
Trevor, I think we need to move to Europe. I think that it is inevitable, and if you can just get your pilot's license going, and we'll just charter a plane and we're off. Sounds like a plan to me.
First customer there.
I'm very expensive.
You know, you other two guys don't realize that you're actually talking to a very practiced marksman as well, with a gun. I mean, you know, I'm not touting the NRA here, Trevor, but Trevor Scheunemann is a man of seriously many talents. And believe me, when I did my interview with him initially on Center Stage, we didn't have enough time for this man. He's really very interesting. So
there's your next career, Jason Bourne.
Yeah.
Hey, don't joke too much.
Opera is a really great cover for a spy, right?
Yeah.
In fact, Trevor, you could probably dash out a pretty good book right now.
Wait, did I just blow my cover? Oh no.
Yeah, you did.
They're coming for me.
Ben Woodward, what's going to be our new normal as you foresee it?
Well, I've no idea. Germany will return to normal, I think. As soon as it can, it will. I mean, it's because it's been relatively, it's dealt with this very well. And as Merkel pointed out quite near the beginning, they've had to deal with the worst in their history. much though the kind of that speech she gave was actually mistranslated in the titles, which is why so many English-speaking people were angry with what she said, because it was mistranslated on the anyway.
Interesting.
I think Germany will return to normal as quickly as it can. And it's great to hear that Copenhagen's having its restaurants open next week. We're not quite there yet. Most of our shops are open. The gym is supposed to open next week, which is going to be interesting. That's been on a state-by-state issue. And my friend who I go to the gym with, he's just shared a video from German TV. Cologne opened its gyms last week. And it's very much a 24-hour gym culture is what they do. And there was a line all the way around the block to get in at 1 minute past midnight to get in the gym. And, you know, some of the machines were cordoned off, but that was what they were doing.
Amazing.
So I think Germany will go back to normal. The UK is more difficult. We haven't really mentioned my Fulham Opera project, which is kind of a fringe opera company that does very, very big pieces on a very small budget. We did Meistersinger last year and on about £100,000, which is absurd because you'd usually spend about 100 times that on a Meistersinger.
And to great critical acclaim, I might add, this Meistersinger. I was there for every performance. It was absolutely stunning.
Well, that's quite an investment of time on your part, and I thank you for it. I think that London, Nick's been talking about his former colleagues from the Opera House. I've just had something cancelled today for July with in London with and I said, well, should we put it back to September or October? And they said, no, we can't really think about starting anything up with audience and instruments until December. So that's a problem, which is one of the interesting things that's been going on in the UK is the Arts Council, which is the kind of lottery funded thing. They've killed off all of their project-based funding in favor of doing a coronavirus relief fund, both for individual artists and for organizations. So a lot of these small opera companies, small theatre companies have applied to this, and Fulham Opera has just applied for, I was basically the first one to write this grant application. And sure enough, the Arts Council have sent me £15,000, which is great. I'm
Bravo.
Very happy to have your money. But the thing is, as daft as it sounds, how do we spend it? We can't spend it at the moment. We can't put on any productions. We can't do anything with that money. And so it just goes from one bank account to another. And I can't just give it out to any singers or instrumentalists. So it's great that they've done that for us, but it just raises almost as many questions as it answers right now. Because to answer your question, I think the new normal will be the old normal. The question is just when that's going to happen. When people are going to have the confidence to come back. I suspect the artists will come back quicker than the audiences, and that's going to be the problem.
So as long as all of you artists right now can really stay in solidarity, that makes me feel a lot happier. And to Ben, good luck with Fulham. I know you have Egyptian Helen coming up, and that ain't no small project. But once again, you will bring it off with your usual aplomb and creativity. And Nick, it sounds to me like you're doing just great where you are. And if we could all get to Denmark, we'd come and join you in a little music making. But I'm not getting on a plane for a while. And I know I'm definitely not going to go to a gym for a while. Maybe like a healthy year of my life. Well, the first thing I did when the coronavirus started, after we locked down, I bought an exercise bike. The best investment I've made in a lot of years. And Trevor, we're going to wait for your beautiful voice, because to be without your singing on this earth would be a crime, a total crime, especially the trajectory you've been on in your career, which is mighty. But I'm loving it that you have time with your family. And I know how much your son means to you. Trevor and I also share a love of myth and wonderful films and wonderful film music. So I'm sure we're spending a lot of time watching Lord of the Rings and other great epic features. To end today on a real up note, I just want to go around and hear what everybody's watching, because I know we're all binge watching fabulous Netflix things and movies, and I've gone back into a whole cavalcade of classic films and had the best time. Trevor, what have you been watching?
I've been not in the mood for things that are too dramatic. I think we're living a pretty dramatic life right now, so I've been kind of enjoying the silly comedies on Netflix, one of them being The Toast of London. I don't know if my British folks have heard that.
Writing that down now, I haven't heard that.
Oh, it's Matt Berry. I don't know if you know this actor. He is hilarious. I think you will enjoy it very much. It's about like a silly actor on the West End and his like you'll enjoy it. Don't trust me. So that's kind of what I've been binge watching. I haven't had that much time to watch TV because we've been doing a lot of family stuff. But in the evenings, that's what I'm checking out.
That's fantastic. I've written that down too. We've got to tune into that.
You won't regret it. I promise. Especially someone in the arts, because you appreciate the nuances of. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's fantastic. Thanks. Nick, what have you been up to, or do you watch? Are you one of these people who are going to tell me you don't watch television? Please don't do that.
No, I do. Don't worry. Actually, it's been quite good because even before the lockdown started, I realised that my wife had never seen The West Wing. And so I thought, well, we need to get on this. So actually, we've been watching The West Wing, and so this has been a wonderful time to. Yes, Ben's got it right. And so it's been a wonderful time to watch that sort of more positive take on politics. We've also been with some
politics.
And we've also been watching. We've got with a group of friends. We've been watching films every Tuesday. We've got one tonight, in fact, and so we've been watching some nice films as well. So yeah, we're watching quite a lot. What
are you watching tonight, Nick?
Actually, I'm not sure. I don't think we've entirely decided. We were talking about Pulp Fiction, but I'm not sure if not sure if we've decided on that yet.
Good choice. Okay, fabulous. Ben Woodward, what are you watching?
Well,
outside of the Met Opera broadcast.
Outside of the opera broadcast, so educating ourselves. We just finished 2 nights ago a rerun of all of the Star Wars movies in order. From episode 1 to 3, then Solo and whatever the other one was called, and then the others in order. And so because I think I might have watched them when I was just the wrong age. Certainly 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, and 9. And so it was good to see them sort of the whole thing play out the way that someone intended it to.
Someone. Quite. And as you all may or may not know, I just did a Zoom conference with an opera singer in Germany and one of my good friends, a filmmaker here, who's doing his own offshoot of the Star Wars ideas. And we did an hour and a half on Zoom about the legacy of Star Wars. And I'm nauseatingly dedicated to Star Wars, but it kind of defined my life at a crucial time in my life in 1977, which ages me terribly, and I'm not afraid to admit, but hey, I'm glad it's still around, and I'm glad, it's so operatic. For all of us, it has that dynamic, and you can't get away from it. So, well, guys, you've been great. You've absolutely been wonderful. And I hope we've shed some light to some people. And I hope we've been able to share some of our personal experiences, which mean something to someone else. And whatever happens, I don't want anyone's creative voices to be silenced. Please, we've got to do everything we can to stay on top. And we have to encourage young people now to keep making music in any way that they can, for fear that this will be lost in the future. And I know we'll all do that, and we'll be responsible. And the interesting thing is, you are all the young ones. I mean, you're right at the start of your careers. You're all doing fabulous, and we want that to continue. And best of luck to everybody. Nick in Copenhagen, Trevor, your career, which is spanning the world, I know it'll come back. I know it will. And enjoy your son. And much love to them and your lovely wife. Ben, with Fulham Opera, I know you'd be the creative soul you are. So, and you can move mountains. You'll make this happen. You'll figure a way.
We always do.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for being on Center Stage. I really appreciate it. All the best to Nick Fletcher, Ben Woodward, and Trevor Scheunemann. This is Pamela Kuhn, and the curtain is now down on Center Stage.